guys, we just finished listening to Willie on the ColecoVisions podcast. Kowalski, what is the Private Enrico doing over there?
They appear to be accessing something called an SNES, sir.
Check the net about this SNES.
It appears to be some type of entertainment device. There's a file here referring to it.
Soul Blazers, the SNES podcast. Awesome. Top Droid, top shelf, top Nintendo. Begin Operation Nintendcast.
$200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES. You're listening to the SNES Podcast with your hosts, Soul Blazer and George.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Super NES Podcast, episode number 86 for your listening pleasure. We're getting up there in numbers. George and I were just talking about this like off mic before we started the podcast. This is the 50th episode that George has been on here with me as a permanent co-host.
He's heating up.
Yeah, he's definitely on fire at this point after almost 2 years.
Is it the shoes?
Yeah, I don't know if he wears shoes. Well, you might, but a lot of folks around here like wear flip flops almost all year long.
I wear
despite the weather. So
I wear boots. That's what I wear.
I get that. Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. We're giving you a working environment. I hope you wear boots.
Oh yeah.
That'd be dangerous, but anyway, yeah, as you may have possibly guessed from those bites, or if you pay attention to our coming announcement from the last episode, we're covering the Super NES port of the very popular casual sports arcade game NBA Jam, which originally came out in the arcades in 1993, published and developed by Midway. The Super NES version of the game was published by was published by Midway still, but was developed by a company called Iguana Entertainment that handled most of the home ports of the games.
They made some bad games. Not saying that this one is, but their
track
sure
record's
made some
pretty
bad
mixed.
games.
They did make some, their ports. They were pretty good at their ports. It was their ports, I think. I mean, this port, Virtua Fighter 2, Virtual Cop, those are like pretty good ports. I think that, I think what came down to the original games, their track record kind of goes, yeah. So
yeah.
But yeah, this got. But yeah. So before we get into the game, I'm just going to mention this here for a little bit here, like off the top, to get George's opinion on this and whatnot, and also to answer a question that I've been asked with recently by a lot of people, namely, why don't you guys cover more sports games on the podcast? Well, there's two reasons for that. One of them being my respectable co-host here. I mean, I don't mean this as an insult to George at all. George is just not a big sports fan, sports game fan like I am. I'm on the record as having said numerous times, and numerous times that I'm a big sports fan. I love a lot of sports games. I play a lot of them still regularly, but we all have genres. We all like genres of games, which we really don't do much for us for one reason or another. I'm not a big wrestling fan, so we all have this kind of stuff that we're kind of into and not into, and I'm sure George would go along with covering a game, covering a game with me. I've twisted his arm. I don't think I twisted his arm on this game, but we'll find out here when we get into it. But just it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to talk about games of certain topic. If both a host on a show want to talk about it. And like I said, this is not meant as this is not meant as like a criticism or complaint or complaint anything like as far as like you go, George. But that is like a big reason.
Yeah.
But there's also not like big reason, and a big reason that is like in my honest opinion, I just don't think most of the sports library for the Super NES has aged very well over the years. It's strange because I'm thinking about this recently, and I'm like, there were a lot of good sports games I remember playing the Super NES as a kid back when the system was new. I mean, there are a lot of good baseball games, football games, whatnot that came on the system, and I don't have the same nostalgia like those games I did with the NES equivalent sports games, because even like nowadays, I still think that games like Tecmo Bowl for football and Double Dribble for basketball and RBI baseball for baseball and Blades of Steel for hockey are all still real good, really fun, great sports games that still hold up very well today. I still go back and play. I still go back and play those games on a regular basis, and I'm like, I don't know what it is. It's just like I think maybe because the Super NES was not really geared to be a sports system. The Genesis obviously had the advantage in that because it's faster, because it's faster processor, and the other resolution modes that system had to make it more advantageous for sports games. And we're gonna and that does show of NBA Jam, which we're gonna talk about here like later on. But it's not to say the Super NES didn't have good sports games like when it came. When it came out, but just a lot of them have not aged particularly well for one reason or another. I mean, I tried to play some of them recently, and I'm just like, it doesn't have that appeal that the NES games still do like for me for one reason or another. So, I just don't think that, with a few exceptions, most of the library of the system for that category has just not aged very well. I mean, of course, there are exceptions. I mean, Phil and I a couple years ago covered the 3 Tecmo Bowl games that came on Super NES, and those games I think are still a lot of fun. It's not really a sports game per se, but I do want to cover a Super Punch-Out on this podcast at one point. It's only kind of loosely a sports game, like a little bit, in the sense that the original the original Punch-Out was a sports game. I am curious to check out Mega Man Soccer, which I've heard some good things about. So that one I will twist your arm on at some point, George. But
wonderful.
But so those two reasons all taken together is the primary reason why we've not covered a lot of the sports library in this podcast, and why we're probably not going to cover most of them on the podcast. So for that, George, you're welcome. But I did want to look at this version of the game, because this is a game I spent a lot of time in. In the arcades, when it first came out, and I had a lot of fun playing this game. And a mutual friend of ours, and Jal, who also does some podcasting every now and then, like The Level, mentioned in a recent episode of that podcast that she had played and enjoyed the Genesis version of this game as a kid, even though she wasn't a sports fan either. And I'm like, I totally forgot the 16-bit versions of this game existed, because I never played the Super NES version at this point. I was curious to see how this came to, because again, this is a case of them trying to shoehorn a more powerful arcade game into hardware, hardware that's not as powerful in either graphical, sound, or processor ability as the original arcade game, like Doom, which we've covered in a recent episode. So I was curious to see how well that came out. George, you knew about this game, but you never had played any version of it before until now, right?
I have Tournament Edition on the Jaguar.
Oh, okay.
And I played it to test it.
Okay. Yeah, that's a... this arcade game was very popular, so it got ported to numerous systems. Besides Super Genesis, it also came out on the Game Gear, the Game Boy, the Sega CD, the PlayStation, the Saturn, the Jaguar that George has mentioned, and 32X, and they all have like pros and cons. I think as far as the conversions go, the Jaguar version's biggest complaint for me is the music. The sound effects music just sound terrible in that version of the game. I have no idea what happened there, but it's pretty atrocious. So, and the characters, the players, they look horrendous. It's like big heads and like cartoon bodies.
Isn't that kind of what NBA Jam is, though?
Yeah, but it wasn't quite as bad in this version of the game. It wasn't quite as bad like in the arcade version of the game. Some of the ports of the game, some of the ports of the game, they really had a hard time getting that head into the body correctly, and they, for whatever reason. So, in the Jaguar version, I think it's just one of them suffers from it a little bit for one reason or another, but I'm not sure. I don't pretend to understand all the factors behind that, but anyway, so the Super NES version of this game came out a few years after the arcade game. Well, actually, I'm sorry, not a few years after. I'm thinking about something else. It came out about a year after the arcade game came out. It came out in North America in March of 1994. And there also was, and it was also released later on the following year, the upgraded Tournament Edition of this game. So it was actually two versions out there, like the Super NES. So most people probably have heard about this game, at least in passing. This game is Exhibit A for what I would call to be a casual sports game, because sports games traditionally fall into two camps. You have the casual sports game fan camp, and then you have the simulation sports game camp. The casual fans are the casual fans. Yeah, I'll be okay. Casual fans will play casual sports games. That's the point I was trying to make.
That's a very good point, Greg.
The casual sports games are very pick up and play. They're very arcadey. You don't really need to know anything about the sport. I mean, very, very little, just to be able to pick it up, to have fun with it. They're usually multiplayer. They're usually rambunctious, with very bright, over the top, gameplay moves and styles and graphics and whatnot. Other good examples of games, all four of those NES classics that I mentioned are definitely fall into the casual game category. For a more modern example, the Hot Shot Golf. Oh boy, try saying that 5 times fast. Golf games currently available on console, PC, and phones are also very definitely casual sports games, which I've heard very good things about, so I'd check it out. Simulation games are the ones where they're the sport the game is depicting is much more realistically portrayed. They're more complicated. They're more detailed. They're definitely realistic as much as possible. Simulations of the actual sport itself. The Madden series is the most famous example of what that's, which actually started out kind of half arcadey, half simulation. Definitely has gotten much more simulation over the last 10 years. But nowadays, the Madden games are definitely in the camp of simulation. So we also have the MLB The Show games, and you also have the NBA 2K Games. I know technically wrestling is not considered to be a sport, George, but I think the current wrestling games are probably definitely simulation heavy, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so NBA Jam definitely falls into the definitely casual sports game fan, because again, I know a bunch of people who don't like basketball but have actually had a lot of fun playing this game over the years. So that's one reason. So that's one reason. So that's an argument that I made toward George and when I wanted to cover this game on the podcast. So we'll find out how well that works later on. But talk about the gameplay here like real quickly before we get into some other stuff here. This is a pretty fast-paced, pretty casual, but even for casual sports games go, representation of basketball. It's 2-on-2. It does have the NBA license, so you can pick from all 30 NBA teams, and you get to pick from the 2 best players who were on that team as of 1992-1993 basketball season. And some players better than others. They did program in certain stats and whatnot that kind of operates things like behind the scenes, as how players making jump shots versus dunks and that kind of stuff. So there's other kind of stuff going on here. Going on there, the kind of the set behind the programming logic of the game. A real quarter muncher like in the arcade, because because your original quarter will cover you one quarter of gameplay. So if you wanted to play the whole game, you have to keep dumping in quarters. And up to 4 people could play at once, which definitely made a fantastic arcade experience. So this game, as I said, was developed by Midway. The main programmer behind it was Mark Trammell, who had a pretty good record of designing a whole bunch of popular arcade games from Midway during this time period. The history of this goes back a little bit interesting, actually. I didn't know all this before doing the research on it. He had designed a game for Midway a couple years back, which another game that we covered on this podcast way before George even joined us, called Smash TV. Did you play that game, George? Yeah, it is. The Super NES version of the game is very, very good. So he followed up. So Smash TV was a huge success. He followed. Mark followed up that game with a pseudo sequel called Total Carnage, which we do need to cover this podcast at some point, because Total Carnage did get ported to Super NES as well. I like it. So, spoilers, I like Total Carnage quite a bit, but the game did not do quite as well in the arcades as Smash TV did. And Mark was under pressure from his bosses to try to turn around that slump and kind of and try to do a more successful arcade game the next day, his next game. And this was also during a time period in the early 90s when the arcade market was going through a resurgence, being dominated by Street Fighter 2 and fighting games of its ilk. So they really needed something special to be able to stand out amongst the crowd and be able to make Midway some money. So definitely a lot of competition and some tight pressure under him. So he went back to look at a game that Midway had done a few years ago before that, called Arch Rivals, which came out in the arcades in 1989 and also got ported to some systems like the Atari 700. Got a very good late in the system port of this game. Arch Rivals definitely is the inspiration for NBA Jam. There's a lot of NBA Jam that was taken over from Arch Rivals, because Arch Rivals is also a 2-on-2 basketball rough and tumble casual sports game with penalties and that kind of stuff. The main differences between the games is that Arch Rivals also had power-ups available in it, and Arch Rivals took place kind of outside, outdoors, rough and tumble gangster area or no holds bar kind of setting. Whereas in this game, they went to the NBA and licensed the rights to be able to use the teams and the players for the licensing cost of $100 per machine sold.
Oh, wow.
Well, I mean, I couldn't find how much the arcade machine originally sold for, but based upon what I know about arcade machines at this time period, you're probably talking about a machine that was around $600,000 to $600,000 each a pop. So, So I mean, even that high licensing though, Midway still made money hand over fist, because this game was hugely popular. It was a very popular arcade game, which explains the tournament edition that came out a year later with some additions and stuff to it. Most of the players the player roster is pretty good, like I said before. pick from the two best players who were on the team like the time period. Two notable exceptions for players who are missing from this game, though, like would be arguably the two best players of the time period. Michael Jordan and Shaquille O'Neal. Both those players had separate agreements and contracts in place because how powerful that those men were at those time period, and therefore Midway did not get from the NBA the rights to use their names and likenesses. So those two players are out. Curiously enough, Michael Jordan, however, was a fan of this game. There were a lot of NBA players who actually were big fans of this game for obvious reasons. And Michael Jordan liked the game so much that Mark developed a personal ROM variation, play this game for him, for his own use. And he is in that version of the game. I wonder if that version's ever been dumped. That'd be who to play around. Play around like a name, I think. But
yeah, that sounds interesting.
So yep, and this is also interesting. I remember this was a rumor going around for a long time back when this game first came out, because some people noticed. The rumor was that it seemed to be like when two of the biggest and most and best teams in the league at this time period was the Chicago Bulls and the Detroit Pistons. So those two teams were very popular to play like an arcade game. The arcade game would also tell you how popular that team was being played at that machine, which is a cool touch. Somebody selected a team. So somebody selected a team. It would tell you this is the second most popular team played this machine. This is the eighth most popular team play this machine. So a lot of people were playing Pistons versus Bulls against one another quite a lot in NBA Jam, and they noticed that the Bulls always seem to and so they noticed the Bulls always seem to come up short against the Pistons for last-second shots in close games, and it wasn't until 2008 that Mark Trammell confirmed that it's true. He's a lifelong Detroit Pistons fan, and he programmed the game to be a little bit biased against the Bulls in the situation.
Of course.
So I got a good laugh out of that because so anyway, this version of this game was, like I said, wicked popular. For the numerous home versions, and all those versions are none of the home versions are horrible. I played a little bit of all of them and doing research like for this, but they're all playable. Even the Game Boy version, even those hardware limitations, is still a pretty playable port of this game. So I mean, all of them are playable, just they all have certain pros and cons. And the Super NES version certainly has those, and certainly has those present as well. So most of their features do carry over to this version of the game. There are still all 30 teams. Like the same player rosters. The controls are very similar in this. They're very similar. They're very similar like this game, like they were like an arcade version. It's still 2-on-2 players. You can still. It's only two. There's still a 2-player option for it. So some of the things that had to be cut out, some of the voices are missing. This game does not have as many of the voices present in this version of the game that the arcade version did, because of their hardware limitations and limited space available in the cart. There are some catchphrases present in this game, but not all the ones that the arcade game is well known for. But also, curiously enough, and I could not find out why this is the case, every other version of this game has music. This version of the game does not. It's silent. And I have no idea why.
That is odd.
I mean, the Genesis version has it. There's no reason there's no reason as far as I can tell, the Super NES version of the game does not have the music. But I mean, it's not a great song. It's not a deal breaker that's missing out of this. But it's also very noticeable because I'm like, God, this is quiet. Because there's no music. The sound effects are here. The sound effects sound pretty good, I think, but so I was very familiar with this game still, of course, because like I said, I had no problem picking up this game right away, despite the fact that I never had played the version of the game, because I was so familiar with the arcade version of the game. George, what was your experience with this game picking up the first time? Did you truly find it pick up and play, or did you have some difficulty getting a hang of the controls?
I mean, there's not too much you can do, so I don't see why it wouldn't be pick up and play. There's only it depends. When you're on offensive and defensive, the controls change, sure, and you're probably gonna have to get used to that because sometimes you don't have the ball, but then you go to the offensive or defensive. I'm sorry, and honestly, it's not too hard. Like, past that, it's not too hard to control, honestly. I think don't just two of the face buttons do the same thing?
Yeah, I think so, because you have because on offense you have one button to pass, one button to shoot, right, and you also have a turbo button that you can use every now and then to be able to to be able to to make your shots go further and increase your chances the ball being able to go in. On defense, the button. You have one button to jump, to try to look like a shot, to another button to try to steal the ball. Yeah. And in both offense and defense, you can switch between your two players at any time. You control one player and the and the AI control the other player in your team. So the controls are pretty simple, I think. Do you think they handle well? Did you have any problems moving your guy around whatnot?
No, not really.
Okay. So we already mentioned the music and sound effect. There is no music in this game, unfortunately. The sound effects I thought of this game were quite good. You have the typical basketball sounds, sneakers squealing against the court, the thump of the ball going out the rim, that kind of stuff. The voices, like I said, there is not unfortunately the same catchphrases as many of the catchphrases in this version of the game. But what's there? I think the voice sounds very good in this game. It's not the best voice, but it's certainly a very clear, understandable, good voice. What do you think about the sound effects and voices?
They're good. I don't know. They work. I don't really have much to say about how the game sounds. It's appropriate.
Did you have any problem understanding the voices?
No, it's pretty clear.
Cool. Yeah. That was my impression too. So, graphics for this game is a mixed bag, and this is where they had to make some compromises before the game to like I said before, to shoehorn it onto a 16-bit system that was not as powerful as the original. As the original arcade hardware. And we've talked about this before, George, with recent Genesis versus Super NES conversions and whatnot. And this version of the game, I think the background graphics are very good and sharp. The basketball court looks great. The background. The close-up background with the players right up, the players' benches and the players on either side of the basketball court. Play what I'm talking about, right? The first few rows, people sitting real close in the court. Those graphics are very sharp, very large, detailed. The background graphics about the crowd and the characters, playing the four basketball players themselves, not quite as sharp. And on the Genesis version of the game, it's the opposite. So once again, you have that case where Genesis versions better graphically in some areas, Super NES versions better than others. It's very interesting looking at these games because we've had a recent slew of games on this podcast where we've had the occasion to directly compare visits the 16-bit version of the game, and it's like, yeah, this is strange. So I mean, the graphics aren't horrible. I think, like I said, the basketball court itself, and and the players, and the people and the players sitting right up against the court, and also the announcers slash judges bench. I thought those graphics looked sharp and clear and very, very good. Whereas the players are just the players are kind of fuzzy. They're kind of there's limited colors. Not really good resolution on those. So what was your impression with the graphics, George?
They're fine. Honestly, I don't know. I think the players looked pretty good, as well as they could do in this type of game. I don't know. I mean, everyone kind of looked the same out on the court, but when they had the portraits, you could obviously tell a difference there.
Right. Yes.
So, looks like a basketball game going on.
Yeah, they used digitized photos of the players to put them onto the heads, which in the arcade version of the game and in this version of the game looks pretty good. I mean, they do have big heads, but it's not as egregious as it is with some other ports of the game where it's really big heads and it kind of looks like a proportion like the bodies.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I mean, the arcade game had gorgeous graphics. I mean, the time period that it came out, arcade came out, and I really love the touch, the touch that both the arcade version and this version of the game has when you score a basket. It shows up that that very television like score summary that shows you the NBA player logo on the side and on the team names. That's very close to how it's very, very close to how the scoreboards that actually showed on TV broadcasts the games during this time period. And really it's not that much different from how it is now.
Yeah.
Very nice touch to have that that included. So. Oh, some of the other sound effects, the sound effects that the arcade version had are either missing or not as prevalent in this version of the game. The crowd cheering and booing, for example, is not really to be found here, unfortunately. But
I didn't notice any of that.
Yeah, it's missing, unfortunately. Yeah. But so overall difficulty of the game. Well, it depends upon. It helps to know, but you can find this out very easily looking online these days too. A basketball fan would know which teams are good teams during this time period, and they would gravitate toward those teams because those players obviously have certain advantages over the other players. Because even though they try to take the two best, quote unquote, best players on the roster to include in this game, certain teams are just better than other teams. And if you take a good team like the Bulls, you're going to have much easier time playing this game than if you played a game. Then if you a team like my beloved Celtics, who are not very good at all during this time period. But yeah, you can look that information up very easily, online these days. So I forgot to mention that little tidbit to you before we started playing this, George. So I'm curious to hear what how you made out as far as the difficulty like this, the difficulty like this game. Did you try different teams, or just try, should we just stick one team for your game playing?
I just stuck to one. I didn't really. I don't know. I had no interest in really choosing any other team because it was just easier for me to pick something blindly and just go.
So, what team did you end up with?
I went with New York.
Okay. Yeah, they were a decent team during this time period. So, Did you have any? I'm curious to hear about your playing experiences. Did you have a hard time beating the AI? Were you able to beat the AI?
Yeah, I was actually able to beat the AI. the games were like really back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But I kind of learned how to game the system and get a decent amount of three-pointers. So
yes, yep,
yeah.
Yeah, 3-point shots are huge. They're huge in this game. Like I said before, certain players will do better at making 3-point shots than other players do, just like in real life. But yeah, I mean, like, I thought that the programmers, I think did a very good job, of keeping that intense, fast-paced, back and forth gameplay style that the arcade game was known for.
Yeah.
Even back when playing the game like in arcades against strangers, it was very, very rare for the game to get more than like 8 points out of balance. Because it seems like I can't confirm this, but I almost suspect that the game kind of tilted things a little bit against a team. It probably started to pull ahead too much to keep things balanced. Like I said, I can't confirm this. It may just be my own speculation / gut feeling about things, but I would not be shocked if there's like a line of code in here that would kind of like balance that. But yeah, so yeah, all in all, the programming in this game I think is quite solid. They were able to keep they were able to keep the core essence about the game. Let's talk about that quick, fast-paced, frantic gameplay that this game is like really like known for. So I really give them like kudos for that. All things considered, trying to put this game onto the quote-unquote weaker Super NES, with the glaring omission about the music not being present, and a few other like small little like bits and nitpicks I have this game. I thought the port of the game was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't great, but I think that again, knowing that the arcade games as well as I did, looking at it now, I'm like, they did a pretty decent job. But like I said before, I don't think any of the home versions of the game are horrible. Most people, when it came out, gave the game pretty high marks.
Yeah.
EGM gave it like 9 out of 10, like for all 4 of the scores. Where they only gave the Genesis version of the game like 7.6, so go figure. But yeah. So this game's fall tournament, a tournament edition sold very well, which is reflected like in the price. The price of the game that we were talking about here. Like in a moment. The tournament mode of this game, by the way, came out 2 years later. The tournament edition of this game came out the following year. It just just had more player attributes, player substitutions were allowed, that kind of stuff. Just the typical bell and whistle upgrade that you find for a sports game. But I did not know until I started doing research on this that this is actually a franchise. I spent so much time playing the first two versions of this game. I had no idea that Midway kept going back to the well for it. There were a lot of NBA Jam games that came out later on that I just missed.
I know there's more, but how many more are there?
Quite a few more. After NBA Jam and NBA Jam Tournament Edition, you had NBA Jam Extreme in 1996, which came out for PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and Windows, as well as the arcade. Then you had NBA Jam 99, which came out in 1998 for the 64 and the Game Boy Color, the N64. NBA Jam 2000 the following year for the N64, then NBA Jam 2001 for the Game Boy Color, NBA Jam 2002 the Game Boy Advance. You sensing a theme here at this point?
No, I don't see any theme here at all.
NBA Jam the following year, 2003, for the PS2, like an Xbox, and then so most of those games are just like upgrades. They also have like 5-on-5 basketball, 3D graphics, simulation mode, creative player. That last one I mentioned, NBA Jam, also allowed you to play legendary all-star teams for the 50s all the way up to the present day, which is like pretty cool. So after that, the franchise got a long rest, and then pretty much out of nowhere, Midway brought back this game, and just calling it NBA Jam in 2010 when they came out. Like they said, a new upgraded version of the game for the Wii, the PlayStation 3, the Xbox 360, like an Android platforms. Which Mark Trammell, the original creator, did have a hand in consulting, like this, consulting like this one. This one I did know about because I played this at a friend's house, like Wii shortly after it came out, and it's pretty good. There's new modes present in that game: campaign, one-on-one boss battles, elimination, 21, and domination. You also have much better high-resolution graphics. The controls work very well. The Wii version you can use some of the Wiimote functions with it if you want to, but you can also play it just regularly like a controller, so either way's fine.
I hate motion controls.
And then they released one more upgrade to that version of the game, NBA Jam on Fire, the following year for the PS3 and Xbox 360, which just improved the AI and the graphics. But yeah, that modern version of this game is pretty good. I actually had kind of forgotten I'd played it. I saw this, and I'm like, oh yeah, I do remember that. I do remember playing that game at a friend's house. But yeah, I had no idea this is a franchise. They went to that same once a year small upgrade trap that a lot of sports games end up going into. So I can't imagine that the Game Boy Color and GBA versions of the game are very good.
I have no idea.
But yeah, so and there are a ton of codes and Easter eggs in this game. The original arcade game was loaded with them also, and and a lot of them came over to the Super NES pretty well. I'm not going to go into all of them here, but there's a ton of stuff in here. You can there's codes present in the game for things like better dunks, better offense, easier blocks, easier steals, infinite turbo. Push opponent and don't get caught on it. Slippery mode, slippery mode's fun. I did play that one. In that version of the game, the floors are done with an extra coat of wax, so everybody slips around very, very easily.
The AI kept pushing me down, and then they never got in trouble.
Yeah, the foul calling in this version of the game does not seem to be as major as it was in the arcade version of the game. I mean, there are fouls present here, but the arcade version certainly had certainly had more fouls called. Not the arcade game is loaded with fouls anyway. Fouls don't tend to be usually found in casual sports games because they kind of slow things down. But there was goaltending and things like that present in the arcade game. So, and some of those, and very, very few fouls are actually present in this version of the game, I noticed. There's also a whole bunch of hidden characters that are in the game, fictional characters, and there's also some real life and there's also and also famously there's some real life celebrities when here also like Bill Clinton, for example.
Yes, I heard about this.
Yeah, so you can also play as Larry Bird. You can also play as Hillary Clinton. You can also play as Randall Cunningham, who was a famous Eagles quarterback this time period.
That's an interesting choice.
Mark Trammell himself is present in the game. You put the right code in. So, but yeah, a lot of other passwords here. Passwords here, and there is one. I don't know if it's a bug or a secret or whatnot. If you're going up to do a shot, just when the buzzer's ringing, to do the ringing and then record the play, you automatically will goaltend that shot. So I don't know if that's a bug or just a feature.
I don't know.
But anyway, so yeah, final impressions. I thought this game was pretty good for considering the limitations that the system had. It came out pretty better than I had expected. I think I would have been happy with this game like I had as a kid. It's just that when this came out, this became this machine, because it was so like profitable, stuck around in arcades for a long time. By the time several years later, by the time that this machine was no longer really found in arcades, the PlayStation version of the game would come out. The PlayStation version of the game is the best version of the game, hands down. It's a very, very close port like an arcade game. So the PlayStation version of the game is definitely the best version of the game for for home use. But this game also has turned up in several Midway arcade collections over the years also, so you can also play it that way. Having said that, the Super NES version of the game I thought was pretty good. It definitely kept the core gameplay intact like an arcade game. The no music and some of the missing sound effects and voices was a bit annoying, but I don't think it's anything really deal breaker. There's no major deal breaker with this game as far as I was concerned. This is still like a very fun game, and I would argue, and I'm curious to hear George's thoughts on this here in a moment. That this version of the game is just as much fun for a casual person who doesn't really even know anything about basketball to pick up and play it, have some fun with, as opposed to along with the guys who were actually basketball fans. This game obviously is more fun played against somebody else. The AI, while it's good, certainly cannot replace the joy and experience of actually playing against somebody head to head. But for what it is, I think this game still captures the core essence, like the arcade game, very well, and still a very fun, casual sports game that anybody can enjoy, sports game fan or not. So now I'm curious to see what George thought of this.
This game's not for me, but I can tell it is well made. It was interesting to play, but it didn't really catch me. I did not really want to play this that much, but it wasn't like torture or anything. It just wasn't really that fun or interesting for me. It was interesting, learning how to play the game and learning the certain quirks and everything about it, and creating basically a strategy to win. But other than that, I don't know. It's just not for me.
Interesting. Yeah, I think you're one of the people I've talked to who play this game play this game we didn't hear about it all that much. Like I said, my track record, even bringing friends of this who really are not sports fans, they still, they still like it enough to play a few games. Like I said before, I think that, I think the experience is enhanced by playing against somebody else. I think if you're playing against another human, you might come away a bit feeling a bit differently about it. But
maybe,
yeah, but no, I understand that. Just so yeah, I thought that you would enjoy this game more. So I guess all I can say is sorry.
I don't really like sports games.
But but like I said, this is not really a sports game per se, because it's just it's very.
Is basketball a sport?
It is.
Well, then this
casual...
is a sports game.
Yeah, it's a sports game, but I think I think this game and probably golfing, modern golfing games and racing games and whatnot are very popular casual sports game fans. Sports games for anybody out there to play. So, but curious. Okay. Well, everybody's entitled. So, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I'm just sorry that you didn't like this. I'm just sorry that you didn't enjoy the game more. But I do agree with you that the game was well put together. It was certainly better programmed system that than I thought that it would be. Just looking at it, right away. So, but and I think it holds up pretty well today. So it's just that some of the things are a little bit clunky today, playing it versus back when it came out. But
it kind of, if you don't give anybody information on this game, and you like load it up on an emulator or something, and just like don't tell them anything, I kind of feel like, you know, it might feel like almost like some kind of modern indie game that does the whole pixel art thing. It kind of seems like that.
I never thought about it that way, but you're right. I could see it that way, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, okay. As I mentioned before, this game was very popular. Lots of copies of this, like on eBay, and you can have it. Again, the pricing for this is all over. It looks like it's all over the place. We've had a spat of games recently where it's like the pricing of these games is just like there's no rhyme or reason to it. It seems like George and I used to look at games where like the difference in prices for card only or CIB only copies were like maybe $10 difference between them. Not anymore. Not these like recent games. It's like I don't understand what the difference is, but I will say, however, going into this, one factor that may have affected the price difference for this one is that there were a lot of copies of this game on eBay. 260 copies recently. 260 copies currently on there. With 460 copies that recently sold. I was not going to go in there and separate the regular version of the game versus the tournament edition.
Tournament edition goes for a decent amount. I know the Jaguar one has a good price on it. So
yeah, I'm not surprised. The Jaguar also had a much more smart permanent carts made for it too, I'm sure. So
probably
that also like affects the price. But so I apologize. Given all the hundreds of copies out there, I was not about to spend the hour or two that it would have required to go in there and use eBay's horrible searching system trying to find out which ones were which and isolate them that much.
That's fine.
These prices, these prices include both. These prices include like both versions of the game. Card only, pretty cheap. The cheapest one I saw, the regular version of the game, and these prices include shipping, was $5.25. $5.25. The tournament edition copy sold for just a couple dollars more. So, and the highest card only price was at $21.
I'd rather buy UN Squadron.
UN Squadron's a good game, yeah. So I'm not gonna argue. I'll argue with that. CIB prices pretty cheap for like Super NES complete game prices, $23.60. So not that hard to get a hold of. For a decent price. There was even a sealed copy tournament edition that's recently sold for $77.50, which again for sealed pricing is pretty cheap. So, for like $7, yeah, this game's totally worth it. I think for $7, but especially like they have a friend to play against. So, and like I said, a lot of people are still playing it. A lot of people must still be playing it. Playing it today to have like 460 copies of the game that's over the 90 days. So it's moving. It's flying off the virtual shelf, like per se.
I do like me a virtual shelf. I'll go right next to my virtual end table.
in your virtual Sims house.
There you go.
I wonder if you could have like a game collection, like recent, like the recent versions of The Sims. I've not played The Sims in a long time.
No.
That sucks.
I don't know. I mean, you could buy bookshelves and buy books and put books in the bookshelves. I don't know. The Sims is not life, because if you buy a bookshelf in The Sims, there's already books in there. That's not how life works.
Right.
Life does not give you the books in the bookshelf.
No, unfortunately. It'd be pretty cool if it did. Alrighty, well, thank you for indulging me like this title, George. You have a chance to get me back here like right now, though, because it's your pick. What game did you decide that you wanted to look at next time?
Street Combat. We're re-looking at it. Battletoads and Double Dragon.
Yep. Crossover, a very curious crossover of two franchises that I have no idea how this happened.
Yeah, I don't know. It's very interesting, but I actually have some history with this game.
Oh, okay, because I don't.
Oh, cool.
Which is strange because I was a big Double Dragon fan as a kid growing up. I loved Double Dragon games. Battletoads, I only ever played the grievously difficult NES version of the game.
Oh, yeah. Which is totally different from the arcade game.
Thank God for that much.
Why, you don't like the arcade game?
No, the arcade game I do like.
Oh, okay.
I played that one quite a bit, but yeah, it does not. Yeah, the arcade version does not induce the same screen smashing moments of frustration that the NES version does.
I much prefer the arcade version over the NES version.
So yeah, I mean, it's one of those it's I knew this crossover always existed, but I never played this game, so I'm curious to check it out.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing to cross over because you wouldn't think that they would do this.
Well, there's another crossover franchise that happened during this time period. Also, which also came out on multiple systems, including Super NES. That I have no idea how that happened. Terminator versus RoboCop.
Oh yeah.
Which another game that we'll have to look at at some point because I'm curious about that. Because that's another crossover franchise. They're going how the hell did that happen? But because Alien vs Predator makes sense. I mean, that's been going on for quite a while now. That that mashup happened in comics way before it ever came over to movies and video games.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one I have no idea. So, but anyway, yeah, good pick. Well, we will get into it next time. Next time that we come back, you come to you guys in 2 weeks.
Yay!
So, that ends this episode of the podcast. We are a proud member of both the Throwback Network and Retro Junkies, where you can find a whole bunch of other retro-themed podcasts, both gaming and non-gaming related. We are available on Libsyn. We're also available on iTunes. Please check us out on there. Give us a review. We very much appreciate it. We have a Facebook page, getting very close to 1,000 likes, so thank you everybody out there for supporting it.
Yeah, I'm watching that too, and it's holy crap.
If you have any questions, comments, etc., you can either leave them for our Facebook page, or you can also send me an email directly to the SNES Podcast at yahoo.com. George and I also do another podcast together, PlayStation Power, where we cover PS1 and PS2 games. Just to warn that podcast is not family friendly like this one is. But and George also does some other stuff too. On the side. What else do you do, George?
Master System Masterpieces. We recently released an episode. It was fun. That's basically it.
Okay. So I think it's about it. Do you have anything else you want to add in for final thought, George?
Don't make me play another basketball game. I already played too many.
Can't make any promises, but I can't promise you that.
Dang.
But it would be a while.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Goodbye.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man. Now you're playing with power. Deep of power.